Hello class, Mr. Fino here. This is Unit 8, Lesson 5 on the origins and spread of Christianity. So in this lesson, we will learn how Christianity originated, which means how it began, and how it spread. And here we see a map showing the spread of Christianity with arrows showing, directions it went and all that stuff. So I'm going to start with a story, okay? And this is the story of the early Christian church and the persecution or the mistreatment and the killings of early Christians. So actually, this image should look familiar. It's the video lecture opening for Rome, and I'll go into more detail on it later, what's happening here. But I just want you to know that this has to do with the persecution of Christians. So, um, you know, several emperors in Rome attempted to cease the spread of the new religion through violent persecutions. Right. Then, in 312 CE of the Common Era, the day before going into battle against a rival, the Emperor Constantine here reported having a vision of a cross hanging in the sky. Around the cross were the words, "In this sign you will conquer." So that night he went to sleep and he had a dream about Jesus. So the emperor interpreted the vision and dream as a sign that he would win the battle if he accepted Christian beliefs. So Constantine and his soldiers went into battle with the first two letters of the word Christ on their shield. So it looked like something on the left here. And then at the Battle of Milvian Bridge near Rome, they won a great victory. So from that moment on, Constantine favored the Christian God over all others, and his mother became a leader in the faith, and he, adopted Christianity and was a devout Christian. All right, so that's a story of the spread of Christianity in a way, and how it spread after its establishment. This is hundreds of years after it was founded, but anyway. All right, so our first question here is, where is Jesus born? So Jesus was born in Judea, a Roman territory on the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. So you can see here the Roman Empire is all the purple area. Judea is the red area here. It's modern day Israel, right? Is the area where Jesus was born. And the people of Judea, they were Jewish. This is the land of, that we learned about when we learned about Judaism and the Jewish people. This was the land where King David and King Solomon ruled. But the people of Judea believed in one God and had specific religious customs. And they were different from a lot of these groups around them, like the Egyptians, who had multiple gods, right? The Persians around here had multiple gods. The Romans had multiple gods. The Greeks had multiple gods. So they were the Jewish people, the people following Judaism were very different, right? So the question here is, what was the government like in Judea in this land? So Judea came under Roman rule in 63 BCE. So here you can see all the Roman soldiers wearing their Roman red. And what the Romans would do is they would appoint Jewish rulers who agreed with Roman rule. So it was technically Jews in power, but they were on the side of the Romans. And in 37 BCE, Herod became the king of Judea. So while Herod was not born Jewish, he practiced the Jewish religion and rebuilt the Temple of Jerusalem, right? Which are positive things for Jewish people. But many Jews did not trust him, right, for one reason or another. And there are stories within the Christian Bible, that paint Herod to be, definitely an enemy of the Jews. And so then when Herod died, chaos ensued, right? His sons kind of fought over the land. And what Rome did was they inserted a military governor to control Judea. So a governor that kind of had control of the military. The military governor, previously mentioned, ordered and maintained order and collected taxes. But again, they usually left local affairs to the Jews themselves. So here you see, here's the money of Rome with maybe Caesar or one of the emperors on it. Here's a Roman tax collector, and then lastly, in their sacred writings, the Jews read prophecies that God would send a Messiah or anointed one, which it means blessed with oil, but it just means someone chosen by God to save them from the Romans. So they They believed there was someone that was going to come, and they still believe that there's someone that's going to come that will save them, in this case from the Romans. All right, so how do we know about Jesus' life? Like, how could we know? This was 2,000 years ago. Well, um, some of his followers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as we see here, wrote down accounts of Jesus' life in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. So they all kind of put their own spin perspectives on his life. And these writings are referred to as Gospels. So they are known as the four Gospels. So next, the birth of Jesus. So historians now believe that Jesus was born around 6 BCE. So this is kind of complicated because the calendar we use, technically, our modern calendar starts in the Common Era from his supposed birth, from Jesus' supposed birth. But historians, through analysis and stuff, they have come to the conclusion that he was actually born about 6 BCE. But according to the Gospel of Luke, Jesus' mother, Mary, was visited by an angel, as we see here in this art, saying she would have a child named Jesus. And then later, Jesus was born in Bethlehem, but grew up in Nazareth learning carpentry, right, which is building things with wood. When Jesus was about 30, a teacher known as John the Baptist, here on the left, identified Jesus as the Messiah that we previously mentioned, the person that would come and save the Jews, in this case from the Romans. So after 40 days, so Jesus has been identified as that Messiah by John the Baptist. After 40 days of praying in the wilderness, Jesus started preaching in Galilee, right? So, or preaching would mean, teaching the people about the religion. All right, so Jesus begins his preaching. So while Jesus started in synagogues, right, which are Jewish houses of worship, because he was a Jew, his crowds became too large, so he moved to open areas like the street, hillsides, and even by the Sea of Galilee. Jesus called on a small number of followers, known as disciples, who were mostly laborers and fishermen. They were common men, right? And a few women, but they were not necessarily the wealthy or the influential. And also, Jesus spent most of his time with the poor and the sick. And as the textbook shows, Christians believe that Jesus could heal the ill, and he had the powers of a God, really. So here we see on the left Jesus preaching, probably maybe in the Sermon on the Mount. On the right, he's healing someone that's sick. All right, so on the teachings of Jesus, while Jesus' teachings were based on Jewish beliefs, because again, he was a Jewish man, he put a special emphasis on love and mercy. So he said that of all the Jewish laws, the two most important were, you shall have the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul. And the second was, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. All right, so love and mercy. According to the Gospels, Jesus told his followers that the kingdom of God was coming soon. And this kingdom that he was talking about, it was not, an earthly kingdom of power and riches, as it says, but, it was a time when people would live according to God's will. They would follow, and live how God wanted them to. Jesus taught through parables, which are simple stories with moral or religious messages. And so here we see an image. This is a story of the Good Samaritan. So I'm just going to briefly talk about it. Jewish law states that you should love your neighbor as yourself. When Jesus was asked, "Who is my neighbor?" he replied with the parable of the Good Samaritan. So in this parable, a traveler was wounded and robbed on the road, as you see here. Two local people passed by and ignored him. So those would be people that he would have known, people that were in his same, group. But then an outsider called a Samaritan stopped and helped the injured traveler. So this person that they wouldn't even get along under normal circumstances, he stopped to help him. So in this parable, it is the outsider, the Samaritan, and not the neighbors who show compassion and stop to help the traveler in trouble. So because of the Samaritan's good deed, Jesus considered him a neighbor worthy of love. So that was a story he told, the story of the Good Samaritan. But some Judeans worried that Jesus' following could cause trouble with the Romans because it was a lot of people coming together, but Jesus never directly encouraged revolt. All right, next we have the death of Jesus. So, according to the Gospels, after a few years of preaching, Jesus went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. This happened every year. Right? Jesus would go to Jerusalem to celebrate, right, God's rescue of the Jews from Egypt. Right? That's Passover. And while there, Jesus told his followers that his enemies would soon kill him. And in fact, the Gospels even say that one of Jesus' disciples, Judas, um, was going to would betray him, and so that all those things transpired, and Jesus was soon taken into custody by the Romans, who worried that his following could cause them trouble, right, and potentially lead a revolt. And so, to eliminate this threat, they decided he must die, and the Roman governor Pontius Pilate ordered Jesus to be crucified, which again is a common form of execution in Roman times, where they were either tied or nailed to a cross until dead. As you see here, this is probably this scene from Jesus' death. He'd be in the center, and he'd be surrounded by two criminals on either side of him. Next, we have the resurrection of Jesus. So the Gospels say that Jesus' followers buried his body in a rocky tomb after he died. And they also say that 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead and appeared to his disciples. And this is an event known as the resurrection. And this convinced his followers that Jesus was the Son of God, and they began spreading the news of his life and his teachings. All right, next we have the missionary work of Paul. So this is quite interesting. Paul of Tarsus, the first part of his life, he actually helped to hunt down and persecute Christians. He was Jewish. He believed Christians were spreading the wrong ideas. So he was actually hunting them down, persecuting and killing them. All right. But according to the New Testament, Paul saw a blinding vision of Jesus that led him to become a Christian missionary. So he became Christian, and specifically he became a Christian missionary, which is someone who tries to convert others to believe in a particular religion or set of beliefs. So he was trying to spread the beliefs of Christianity. Paul was educated, spoke Greek, and was a Roman citizen. So he was very well equipped to spread the beliefs of Christianity, and he made it his mission to convert non-Jews known as Gentiles. So at first, early in Christian history, it was mostly Jews that were converting, right? Because they already shared most of the beliefs of Jesus, right? But Jesus encouraged everyone to, that anyone could follow his teachings. And so Paul focused on non-Jews or Gentiles. In Paul's letters, he taught that all people were God's children. So again, that idea. Paul preached throughout Asia Minor, where he was born, it's modern-day Turkey, Greece, and Rome. So you can see on this map all of the places that Paul went. He went all over the place in multiple journeys. But on these travels, he met riots and opposition. And the tradition says that he was actually imprisoned and beheaded around 65 CE, a time when many Christians were being persecuted. All right, so now last on to the spread of Christianity. So by the 60 CE, around the time when Paul was murdered, Christianity began to get the Romans' attention, right? Because specifically, Christians refused to worship Roman gods as well as the emperor, right? People in the Roman Empire were expected to look at the emperor as a god, but Christians refused to do that because they had their one god they believed in already. And they believed there's only one God, just like the Jewish people. Also, Christians preach peace and love, so many refused to join the Roman army, which would also be problematic for the Romans because they would need people in their empire to fight for them. So as the number of Christians grew, Romans considered it a threat, and it was declared illegal. So it was literally illegal to be Christian at this time. And here's this image again. So let me explain here what's happening. So to make an example of early Christians and punish them and persecute them and kill them, Romans had Christians crucified, again, which is the idea they're either tied or nailed to a cross, burned to death, or eaten by wild animals in massive arenas where people would come and watch the events as spectators. So here in this image, you see all three. You see right? You see on here, these individuals, these Christians have been they've been crucified, right? They've been tied up on the cross or nailed to the cross. Some of them have been burned, and then you can see a group of Christians here and a lion. You can see where that's going, right? Lastly, it took many years, but in 313 CE, so that's about 250 years later, Constantine, who was an emperor that we talked about earlier, that was the story, right? The story of him converting. He saw the vision and converted to Christianity. He announced the Edict of Milan, which allowed Christians to practice freely. So now it was legal to be Christian, and they could practice it freely. And within 60 years after this edict, in 380 CE, Christianity became the official religion of Rome. So this is a very, that's almost 400 years from its establishment, but within 400 years, it went from, being established, Christians being persecuted, to become the official religion of the entire Roman Empire. So that's a pretty fast come up, right? All right, so in conclusion, in this lesson, we learned how Christianity originated and spread. All right, thank you.